Okay, so good to be back, and this is a special shout out for Ryan and Johnny, who I know are watching as well. Kol hakavod. Nice to be able to teach you Torah remotely, as it were. That's the beauty of the internet, if it's used properly. So, last time we ended off on Thursday, just going through the, I don't know what word to use, tragic, sorry tale. The shaila that was asked to the Aruch Laneh about this woman who, in her innocence, believed this trickster, this fraudster, this pervert, who was intimate with her under the guise of being Moshiach, no less, Eliyahu Hanavi or something. And so the Nakuda was as follows. The Nakuda was that she was convinced that she was doing something good. She was doing something that was correct, a mitzvah. Does that make a difference insofar as the u'ma'al or boima'al and being osa to her husband? Now we'll start with the tshuva. It's on side 7 on your source sheets. Teshuva. Says the Binyan Tzion. 7, what's the problem?
No, I don't have the big one, I think.
Why not? Where is it?
You gave a bigger one, that's what you said?
Yeah.
Sorry,
What?
It's in my favor.
Zog the Binyan Tzion. Chazarti al kol atzdodim v'koshe ma'oid limtzoi trufa u'mozer lemakas ha'yiveles shetia muteres lebayla. It's really difficult, he says, to find a heta. Ki ma shetayenes sheshegegesi v'kavanos ha'hoysal shem shomayim ein zu tano lahatira. She says that she was a shoygeg and it was kavanah was l'shomayim. That's not a reason. On the basis of the marik, lefi mashakos marik, v'nifsek b'ramah even ezer siman kufayin ches she'im zinsa. We saw the ramah. The ramah passes like the marik. If a woman was mezana, she was unfaithful. Shesovra shemuta liznois. She thought it was okay for whatever reason. Have a kemezida v'asura lebala Yisrael. If she did not know it was asa. Because the main thing, says the Maharik, the determining criterion is whether there was an infidelity insofar as the exclusivity of the marital relationship is concerned. U'mo'al o boi mo'al. And therefore, the fact that she thought for some weird reason that it would be mutter is utterly irrelevant. It doesn't say u'mo'al o ma'al b'Hashem, u'mo'al o boi mo'al. We're on page 7, yes? Yes? Good. Omnom. Right. Omnom. Then he says something really interesting. He then quotes a Trumas Hadeshen. The Trumas Hadeshen, Simon Reish Chof Bais, de tuva mekel shaloi leser isha lebala. He goes out of his way, the Trumas Hadeshen, and here we get a fascinating glimpse or an insight into the mahalach, the derech hapsak of the Trumas Hadeshen. He says that when it came to situations where there was a question about whether a woman would be allowed halachically to be with her husband, he would go out of his way to the mekel meiram shelo leser isha lebala. He would be uncharacteristically lenient. Despite his general approach to psak, which is to be machmir and machmir and machmir, hochel chumra v'hochel chumra, but in these particular instance, he would be uncharacteristically makel, and therefore says the Aruch Laneh, im kein ein lanu ela lotzeis beikvosav, and therefore I feel sort of duty bound to follow this. And maybe I'll add a very short, just an interpolation from another source. Famous Gemara at the beginning of Brachos, where David HaMelech contrasts his behavior, what he does, and the way he spends his time, unlike other kings. Other kings are, schluffing and having parties and orgies and I don't know what, and having a grand old time. And he said, Va'ani yodai meluchlochos badam b'shviru b'shilya k'dei letahir isho lebayla. David HaMelech was paskening Shailas, Hilchos Nidra Shailas, and he said literally, my hands would be bloodied, would be dirty with Shailas. He would literally, in English we use the expression, to get your hands dirty means to get into it. It says, David HaMelech, literally, my hands are dirty. Yodai meluchlochos badam. My hands are stained with dam. Kedei letahir isha lebayla. Says the Noda B'Yehuda, a diuk. He doesn't say, my hands are meluchlochos badam in order to clarify what the emes is, what the halacha is. It seems there was an agenda. The agenda is letahir isha lebayla, if it is at all possible. You could say it's quite controversial. Surely the agenda should be to find out what the emes is and let the cards fall where they may. No, he doesn't say that. Zog the Noda B'Yehuda, he's medayik, in tzlach, in brachas. Kedei letahir isha lebayla. The tzvek, the tzion, the goal, the target is, if possible, letahir isha lebayla. And I'm hearing shades of this in the Aruch LaNer, who is quoting the Maharoi, the Trumas Hadeshen. And therefore, he's going to come up with quite a novel approach. Let's have a look. Okay. Gamani chipasti limtzei heta kfi ani yazdaiti, and therefore I went looking for a heta. Va'adabra v'yirvach livi. Dihine. Follow with. B'shut maharik al sheles maril b'shesh zin satachas balabarot and v'lo yoda sheshes b'dovim michoshev shoygeg. Here is the question of the maharik that he was asked, and we've been through this, so I'm going to run through it. It was a woman who was mezanatachas bala willingly, but she just didn't know that it was forbidden. So the maharik answers, because she knew she was being unfaithful. She knew she was betraying him. She didn't know whether technically it was osur or mutter. And therefore he says, it's a betrayal. And he brings a proof from Esther, right? Who knew what she was doing. And even though there he says it was a mitzvah, we went through all of this, it was an incredible mitzvah, nevertheless she became osur. Go down, 8 or 10 lines. It's just a quote. And then it's roughly halfway down. The line starts with the word de Esther. Mm-hmm. Find that word and go towards the end of that line where it says, Ulefi aniyas daiti. Mm-hmm. And here is, until now was just the quote, he was quoting the Maharik. Now says the Binyan Tzion, says the Aruch LaNer, Ulefi aniyas daiti. Yesh lahoshev al zeh, he said, the truth is, I could argue with this. The after svaras Maharik svara gedoylahi. It is true. He acknowledges that the logic of the Maharik is a good one. It's a good svara. Degamim loyma ala bal bashem raksham ala babal asura. But lefi aniyas daiti, he says, but that the applicability of this concept loy shayach zeh rak bezinsa barotzoin v'niskavno lahana asa. This could be used, the Maharik could be used in a case when she is mezaneh barotzoin. She wants to have this intimate, illicit, unfaithful relationship. But she just didn't know that it was asur. Shemi kol mokaim, sing at the end of the day, niskavno limo babala. At the end of the day, she did have intention to betray her husband. Aval bezinsa l'shem mitzvah. But our case, and he says the case of Esther, it's not in Yiddish we'd say it's not a good sushtel, it's not a good comparison. Aval bezinsa l'shem mitzvah. A woman who's mezaneh l'shem mitzvah, misguided though it might be, and sometimes it will be actually guided. With Esther, it was guided. You'd ask her herself, do you want to have this relationship? She'd say, not in a million years, yuck, no way. But she is somehow convinced, correctly or incorrectly, that she is doing a mitzvah. She's doing l'shem shamayim. How on earth, asks the Aruch LaNer, could the Maharik have designated and defined this as a betrayal against her husband? No.
And the truth actually, it says in the story that she found him repulsive.
Yeah. No, yeah, but that's in the Binyan Tzion's own shaila. He's questioning the Maharik. The Maharik is talking about a case where a woman was, that's his question. Mm-hmm. And now he goes, what is the Maharik? The Maharik brings a raya, a proof from Esther. Really? That's a betrayal? How can it be a betrayal if it was Mordechai himself who told her to go? Mm-hmm. So how on earth could that be a betrayal? וביוסי יקשה גבי מרדכי, שהוא בעצמו הציבה לו לבוא אל המלך נגד רצונו. She didn't want to go. And Mordechai says to her, who knows whether this is the whole reason why you are here? He pushed her to go. So how on earth can that be a betrayal? It's not a betrayal. He told her to do it. Yeah, he sent her to do it. So it's a very, very strong question. And remember this svara, because it's going to be relevant, not today, but when we get to the tshuva, or two tshuvas possibly of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. And this is as we would say, this is a bomba kasha. Now the truth is, he says, this question has already been asked in a way. Kvar hikshu hamaharsha v'harif be'en Yaakov stira b'divrei Esther. And here he utilizes a very interesting, fascinating, very important question the Maharsha and the Rif in the Ein Yaakov asks. They ask an apparent contradiction in the words of Esther. She turned round to him and said, I'm going to be forbidden to you because now I am going willingly. Right? The Gemara says, avadati, until now I went ba'oinus, and now I went baratzon. Okay. And then, so she was self-defining the activity that she is doing is, I am now going to Achashverosh baratzon willingly. And therefore I'm going to be forbidden. However, if you look in the Gemara and Megillah, it says, Omer Rebbe Levi, Kivin shegiya lebeis hatzlamim, nistalka himeno shchina. She comes into his house, and the shchina goes away, and she says, Keli, lama azavtani. Pasuk in Tehillim, yes? Keli, my God, why have you abandoned me? Is it because Shema atadon al shoygeg kamezid va'oines karotzain? Is it because you, Hashem, are looking at the shoygeg that I'm doing, or the oines that I'm doing? I'm forced to be here. I don't want to be here. Are you viewing it as if I'm here willingly? Is that why you have abandoned me, O Shechina? Upirush Rashi, Afal Pishani ba elov me'elai. Even though it is true, I am physically, there's no gun behind my back, I am walking in, but oinesu. It is an oines. I don't want to be here. I feel compelled. Mordechai has told me to go. So hold on a second. So we have now, asks the Maharsha, potentially a contradiction in Esther herself. On the one hand, she is characterizing what she's going, Achshav, Kasher Avadati, she says, because now I'm going Baratzain. On the other hand, she herself says the Gemara, that she's as an oinus. So she is self-categorizing, self-defining what she is now doing simultaneously as Rotzain and oinus. What on earth is going on? We have, whichever way you look at it, forget any of these shilas. How do you learn a Gemara? Beautiful, brilliant question. Let's see. Says the Aruch LaNer the following. He suggests the following. If it was truly for the purpose of saving Klal Yisrael, then of course there is no greater level of compulsion and onus than that. Force majeure, a situation where you don't want to be in this situation, but it is the right thing to do to save Klal Yisrael. Then of course that is onus. But here he introduces, it's such a genius, mamash, unbelievable, beautiful. Aval kafi hanira midivrei Mordechai. If you read Mordechai's words to her, you can read into them a certain hesitancy, a certain uncertainty in Mordechai's words himself. Because Mordechai says to her, if you're going to be quiet, if you're not going to do this, Hashem will save Klal Yisrael from another. They will get saved. It could well be that actually this is your purpose. So, on the one hand, the kavonas devar, he says it far better than I could. The kavonas devar, the kavona is, Mordechai says, I have no doubt that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will save us. The question in Mordechai's own mind was, how will that Hatzalah derive? It may come, you could well have an opportunity to change the course of history and be part of that. It could come via your agency, or if you don't, it'll come somewhere else. He says, maybe you're only there for the purpose of saving Klal Yisrael, like the Ibn Ezra says. Therefore, mitzad isur eishes ish, from the perspective of the isur of eishes ish, afal pisha hoya sofek. So what have we done? We've established it's a doubt, but sofek, it's also mutter, because it's a sofek pikuach nefesh. The al sofek nefasha is gamkein mechalelim Shabbos, afilu Shabbos. The fact that it is a sofek, it doesn't make a difference, because for a sofek, for Hatzalah, you also would. What about Aroyos? Karka Olam, whatever, fine. But Aval Shetia Achakach Muteres Leba'ala, but post fact, once it's happened, yeah, you can still use this for the moment. Yeah. I gave you a new one, but you said But afterwards, once she's done it, that she should be Muter Leba'ala, they have a Sofik Isur. Now, looking back, we have a Safek Isur. It would have been possible that Klal Yisrael would have been saved through another agency, and therefore, Haznus is Barotzain, Shalei L'Tzairech. And that's why she says, look, I have to go, and I'm going to go, because I feel that it is a Safek. Looking forward, it's a Safek. Maybe my agency will save Klal Yisrael, or maybe it'll come from another place. When it comes to saving somebody, when it comes to saving Klal Yisrael, you don't take into account, it's a sofek. We're Mechalel Shabbos for a sofek pikuach nefesh. So she says, I have to go. But now when we're looking at it in the rear view mirror, and we're saying, well, now am I osur lebala? Is it considered barotzin or not? I don't know, because this is what he says. Why? Because it could be the Hatzalah would have come from another place. And therefore, from a Sophic perspective, I would be forbidden. V'lochein, therefore, so when she comes to the Beis HaTzlomim, and the Shechina went away from her, she said, Lama azavtoni, v'chiyat odam shegin k'mezid v'oines k'rotzoin. She says, are you judging an oines like a rotzoin? He says, Lo shehoisa Esther mesupekes bezeh. Not that Esther had any doubt whether HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives judges an oines like a rotzen. It's a pasuk in the Torah. Somebody who does something because they have no choice, of course Hashem doesn't do it as rotzen. But what she's saying is, maybe you are showing me by the Shechina, there's a suffix here, right? As she's going in, there is a suffix. Will the Hatzalah come about via me, or will it come mimokim acher, like Mordechai says? She has no way of knowing. She feels she has to go in because for a sofik b'koach nefesh, you go ahead. And then she gets a sign. The Shechina goes away. So she says, maybe this is Hashem actually showing me that actually it's not an oinus. Maybe this is not an oinus. Maybe you don't want me. Maybe I'm allowed to take this as a sign. From the fact that the Shechina goes away, until now I thought I had to go, a sofik, but now you've given me a sign min hashamayim, my Shechina's gone away. Maybe you're showing me that you don't want me to save Klal Yisrael. And therefore when the Shechina returned, she knew that she was taka, was an oinus, and through her Hashem wanted to save Klal Yisrael, so she was right to go in. And however, once it was afterwards, it would be lo nechshav liznus sheteser abala she'oinus. And therefore, be'emes, once, he's now saying a chiddush, once the Shechina has returned, so she now knows this is the Ratzon Hashem, it's the right thing which she had to do, and therefore, she would not be osa. He's arguing with the Maharik. It's only beforehand where she's only going from the perspective of a Sophic. You could turn around and say, well, the Sophic allows you to go and do it, but it could be looking in the rear view mirror afterwards. Maybe the Hatzalah could have come through somewhere else, and therefore, is it an Oinus or is it a Rotzain? But if it's really L'Shem Shamayim, then she wouldn't be Osa. So he's arguing with the proof of the Maharik. V'hayotzei hazeh. Let's. He hasn't finished. You got to let him finish. V'hayotzei mizeh. I think it's a printing mistake. V'hayotzei mizeh she'im noimar kain. If we were to say this, if my pshat is right, says the Aruch LaNer, then oz bezinsa barotzei l'shem shamayim loy tikra shemo alo b'bala. Then inochanama. If she does this l'shem shamayim, that would not be considered a betrayal of her husband, and therefore shitaka would not be osa. Why she was saying before, kasher avadati, now it's barotzain, that's only because at that point in time, this is how he gets rid of the question of the marik, the proof, which is I'm sure what you wanted to ask me. How he gets rid of the proof of the marik is the first Gemara, which says kasher avadati because it's barotzain, because at that stage there was an element of doubt, and she couldn't be sure. There was no way, I may well end up being osa to you. Once the Shekhinah returned to her, now she has a proof that Hashem wants her to do this. She is the avenue. She is the avenue to bring about Hatzalah. Then it becomes mutter and a mitzvah, and taka she would not be osa l'bayla. And in Ochanama, according to the Binyan Tzion, she wouldn't be osa l'bayla. He says, "Ochein einani kedai lachlek ala marik ubash lahat ulahat isen negdom." That's where we'll stop for the moment. Well, take your point, your question. Yes.
Somewhat along those lines, but it's more a bigger question.
Yes.
It's somewhat reminiscent of the whole topic of having bitochen and knowing when to do and doing hishtadlus, right?
Yeah.
So I have to have faith. We know what Mordechai says. It will come. The good will come. We will be saved. But I don't know. Do I have to act? That she has to have? Somebody has to do something. We have a suffix, so therefore we have to act. It's just a general observation. What we could learn from that, or for life, or general principles in those.
So we have to be guided. This is halachic.
Yeah,
this is halachic.
I know, I'm extracting more like a...
that's an interesting discussion.
What's the other thing? Then again, wouldn't that make the argument a little bit more weaker? Now that we say in retrospect...
Which argument? The Mariks or the Orchalinez?
The Orchalinez. Now that in retrospect, we know that it had to come through Esther.
Yes.
There is no more doubt that it was an onus, and therefore...
Correct.
It's fine. That's my...
That is his point.
Yeah, but couldn't we also always say, how do we know that it had to be her? Maybe if she wouldn't have done it, it would have been to somebody else. So did it have to?
She was entitled. She got a direct sign, Minas Shamayim, that she was doing the right thing.
She was doing the right thing. Good.
So means that Hashem did want. That's right. That is. She's entitled to use that and therefore, not only was it. In other words, she was not only doing Hatzalas Yisrael on the basis of a suffix, but she now had a pretty clear guidance, Minas Shamayim, that it was meant to come through her. In which case, and she didn't want to go. She didn't want to go. Mordechai had to force her. So there's no ma'al or ma'al. He just needs to get rid of the proof from the Gemara Kashavadati of Oddity, which he's done. Yeah. And therefore, he says, however, I don't feel able to argue with the Maharik, which is paskened in the Ramah. But now we go on to another Shaila. Omnom, Ra'isi b'Shailas Atshuvas Shvus Yaakov, one of the Gedolei Achronim. He says, however, I saw the following Shaila. Shenishal be'ish shaholachim ishtoi v'im acherim bayar. A man went with a group. There was a group of men, we're not told exactly how many. There was a group of men went in the forest, and one of the men had their wife with them. Ubo aleim ritzchonim, and a murderous group fell upon them. V'lo yodu lahatzil nafsham, and they were thinking, searching how they're going to be saved, their lives be saved. And the only way they figured they could save their lives was kiyim alidei shehifkira ha'isha atzmo lahem barotzein ba'ala. The woman, they realized there was only going to be one way that the group could be saved, and that is if she would become available to this group for intimacy. And her husband agreed under duress, obviously, but her husband agreed that if this is what's going to take to save everybody's life, then including our own, then it's okay with him, so to speak. Obviously not happy about it, but under the circumstances. And the question was, afterwards, the Shaila came to the Shvus Yaakov, this horrible, terrible story, is she allowed to go back, to be back with her husband? Is she mutter l'bayla? V'heishav al pi divrei Marik. And the Shvus Yaakov answers the following. He says, on the basis of the Marik, and here we have another beautiful little piece of lamdas coming up. Heishav al pi divrei Marik, shehiksha, ma ha'ya chilik be'Esther. What was the chiluk insofar as Esther was concerned? Bein ad achshav shahoya barotzain, ubein achshav shenechshav karotzain, kiven shahoya gamkein lahatzolas Yisrael. What difference does it make? Both before and after. Neither case, okay, she got married to Achashverosh and she went initially to him. That was ba'inus. And now, what makes it barotzain? In the Gemara's perspective, how do we understand the Gemara? In neither case was Esther Hamalka, Esther the Tzaddikas, the Neviah, happy to be intimate with Achashverosh HaMelech? Of course not. She was taken the first time because she was taken. She didn't have a choice. And if this time she's going because to save Klal Yisrael, then that's also, why should it be fundamentally any different? It's a very sound question. And here the Shvus Yaakov gives a lomdus. V'tiritz b'svara yeshara. Says the Aruch LaNer, he says the following. De'im ha'oines al ha'be'ila atzma. If the oines is on the act of intimacy itself, the proximate cause of coercion is on the act of intimacy itself. She was taken to Achashverosh, v'tilokach Esther el HaMelech Achashverosh. She was physically taken into his bedchamber. That's called zinsa ba'oines, umuteres. Aval b'she'ein ha'oines al ha'be'ila. But when there is no oines on the act of be'ila itself, but she has a good reason why to willingly walk into his bedchamber, so he doesn't need to be intimate with her against her will. The against her will bit is not on the intimacy, it's the whole situation that leads up to it. She walks in, why? She doesn't want to. But when it comes to the act of intimacy, she knows what she's doing. She's doing this, it's a terrible sacrifice for her, but she's doing it for another cause. So as long as the oines element, the coercion and compulsion element, is not on the act of intimacy, but on something incidental, on something tertiary, on something secondary, then that's not called oines, that's called rotzen. It's a nice svara. Otherwise, how do you even explain the Gemara? Let's see how you hear the lomdas. Let's see how he puts it. Hello, you look a bit tired.
No,
You good? But here it's Mishras Yaakov. The im ha'oines ala be'ila atzmo. If the oines is on the act of be'ila, ki k'moshe ha'yog shenilkecha the first time she was taken to Achashverosh, zen echshav zinsa ba'oines. That's called an oines. Umuteres, and she's mutter. Aval b'she'ena oines ala be'ila. But when the oines is not on the be'ila itself, rak machmas emo acheres elech eselav. She's going to him because there's another fear. V'hi misratzetzes. And she willingly goes along with the intimacy for the purposes of Hatzalah. So even though it is true, what you're doing is the right thing in order to save yourself and many others, but still it's barotzain. But the be'ila was barotzain. As long as the act of be'ila is barotzain, then she becomes asur al bala. And with this, he also answers the contradiction we asked before about Esther sometimes considers herself to be oines, sometimes barotzain. V'lachein chilek, and therefore his chilek is the be'ila was not barotzain but only lahatzil, asura labala. But if the be'ila itself was ba'oines, then it's mutter. That is the Shvus Yaakov. V'hashta, very interesting. That's the Shvus, the halach of the Shvus Yaakov. And therefore the Shvus Yaakov was saying that this woman in that case, she's asa. Because the Be'ila was Baratzain, although of course she didn't want to do it, but the Be'ila is Baratzain. That's how he paskins. Says the now we go back to our Shaila here in the Aruch LaNer, right? This woman who thought she was doing.
But in that case, they figured like this is the best way to save it, so we're going to propose this deal, so to say, because the bandits didn't come and say, we want your woman now.
I don't know if that makes a difference. Why should that make a difference in halacha?
Because of exactly what you just explained. If
no.
The bandits would have put the gun on their
if they would have...
Like, give me a woman now, otherwise I'll kill you. That's a big difference. Otherwise they are...
No. The only difference would be is if Chas v'Shalom, they just got a hold of her and did what they wanted with her. That would be ba'onis. The oinus on the be'ila, that is oinus on the be'ila.
But what's the difference? You gave as an example to oinus be'ila if they took Esther and brought her into the chamber.
Literally,
so holding a gun against her hair or his head and say...
No, we have to, so then maybe I wasn't clear enough. But it's oinus on the act or no oinus on the act itself? Is the act an act of rape? Or is the act of, I'm not happy about this, I don't want this, but I consent because of another cause. And therefore, so I see what you're doing. You're pointing out that we're going to have to say that with Achashverosh initially, it would mamish was an act of oinus, an act of rape. That's what you have to say according to this, masking. Okay. So now back, which how do you know? Maybe it says it was. Maybe it was. According to him, it was. He's saying it was. We don't know. I mean, I hear it's a bit of a chiddush, but she's saying that achshav ba'oinus means on the act itself. Now back to the shaila of the Aruch LaNer, which is this is all the tshuva of the Aruch LaNer, right? So it's a long shtickle. I've cut out a lot of it, but the tshuva, the shaila was long. He then brought the marik. He wanted to argue with the marik. He then brought the Shvus Yaakov, and now let's see what he's going to finish it off. Let's see. V'hashta b'nidon hashayla she'omalo hanoyef yemach shemoy. You see that? Yud mem shen. Yud mem shin. I think it's yemach shemoy, which is quite really a strong, but this horrible person. So this fellow said to her that he's Eliyahu Novi, and he was sent min hashamayim to be with her, and this simple woman, Hemina Boiveles Kolkach, so much that she called up her husband to say, oh, look, we became rich, we're going to open this box on Tuesday, remember? According to her, there was a mitzvah min hashamayim on the Be'ila Atzma. According to her, there was a mitzvah min hashamayim for the be'ilah. Ve'ein lecha oynes gadol mizeh. Very interesting. He could have finished this off differently and said the act of be'ilah wasn't an act of rape. So this is very subtle here now. We've got to listen very carefully. Because he's now defining oynes as not just being physical rape of the act itself. He's defining it as this woman, in her mind, she received an email from Hashem himself, kind of thing, right? You've got to do this. This is Eliyahu Novi. So in her mind, she had no choice about the action. In her mind, she had zero choice about the action. She had zero intention to betray her husband. She says, of course my kavanah was l'shem shamayim. Then yesh lodun that maybe even on the basis of the maharik and the achronim, it would be considered an oynes gomor umuteres lebala. Kain nira lefiani daiti. Here he wants to say that possibly even according to the maharik, this would qualify as an oynes. He says, ochein, however, ein lismoich al hoira osi. But I don't wish this psak to be taken as final, as authoritative, unless, and this is quite common, you find this in the Tshuva Svarim, especially when there's something a bit controversial, if two other Baalei Hoira will agree, I will join with them to allow this woman to be with her husband. As it was said in the Shaila, she's a good woman, she has children, etc. Now this is quite revolutionary, and it needs understanding. Until the last words, you could think, in fact, the first time I saw this tshuva, I thought he was going to finish off and say the opposite. I got it totally wrong. I thought he was going to finish off and say, but given that there was no onus on the act itself, therefore, it's not considered onus. And he says the other way around, so he's redefining onus. Onus means that is there an onus on the act itself? And now there is, in my mind, still a little bit of leeway of understanding, like you were asking before. So when do we stop saying that it's not onus on the act itself? Go back to the case of the Shvus Yaakov. The case of the Shvus Yaakov, this woman understood, she didn't want to do it, but there was an onus on the Be'ilah. This is the only way we're going to save ourselves. So why is that not onus? He's quoting the Shvus Yaakov,
there they could have had other options, I think. I mean, they figured out with their own...
Apparently they felt there was no other option.
But they felt that's exactly what it is. They felt it's the best option. Whereas here, it's...
You're saying that's there because...
The can only come if Mashiach comes if you bear by children.
And
there's no other way.
But one second, do you really think that husband and wife in that scenario, in the forest, would have gone along with this extreme option if they had, any of them had felt there was another option? Doesn't sound like it. So
well, the thing
it's conjecture.
Here's the thing, they felt like it. That's exactly what it is.
And this woman felt that this was Mashiach. I mean, this is what she was told. And they were told, the robbers said to them, the only way we're going to let you go is if...
Then I didn't understand the story with that Shvuz Yaakov brings. I understand.
Well, the story is very clear.
They didn't tell them.
Well, read it. You can read it. I mean, but nowhere in his Lomdus does he say that maybe there was another option. The Svara Yeshara of the Shvus Yankov is the onus on the Be'ila, but when the onus is not on the Be'ila, but because of a something else, for Hatzalah, so we must say, in the case of Esther, at the beginning, in the case of Esther, she was taken. It wasn't for Hatzalah. She was just taken. Yeah, hold on. Maybe this is a bit clearer. When Esther was taken the first time to the Vatilokach Esther Beis HaMelech, there was no ulterior motive. She was taken. She did not want to go, full stop. There was no, I'll go because maybe I'll save Klal Yisrael. There was no Gzeira at that time. So it was just Einus. That's the pshat. That's it. She was taken for the purposes of being with him, and she didn't want to. So what I said before maybe was not 100% correct. It's not about rape, the actual act. Of course, the point is, she was an onus for the Be'ila. There was no ulterior motive. Oh, okay, I'll reluctantly go along with it because otherwise X, Y might happen. No. She would do no choices, no options. This is it. Whereas here, there's an ulterior... it is true that the Be'ila itself was... When these ruffians had their way with this woman, she didn't fight at that point in time because they'd made an agreement. It's terrible, it's tragic, it's horrible, but that was their cheshbon. So there's an external compulsion, but not on the Be'ila itself. Okay, that is a bit clearer. So anyway, that is the Aruch Laneh. Tomorrow we'll take it further with the Noidu B'Yehuda, and then we'll move on to some of the Gedolei Achronim as well. Shkayach.